I'm John Dennis. I'm running against Nancy Pelosi.
We have the most beautiful state and one of the most beautiful places in the world, and people are leaving.
I'm gonna catch you when all the cameras aren't around, and I'm gonna you up. I'm tired.
He's the chairman of the San Francisco GOP, and he's running against House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
Step back, everyone.
Thanks for your patience. We're running a little late today, but I want to get right to it. I want to welcome everybody to the John Dennis Report, which you can find on John Dennis Report on Facebook, and Real John Dennis on Periscope for as long as that lasts. I think that shuts down at the end of next month, and then on YouTube, John Dennis Report as well. But before we get any more involved in or any deeper into this, let me introduce my guest, who I've come to refer to as the great Scott Presler. Not just Scott Presler, but the great Scott Presler. How you doing, Scott?
I'm doing just fine, thank you.
It's great
Don't
to
put me up on a pedestal just yet.
Why, do you have something bad to tell me? This is the great Scott Presler, and as bashful as he is, he really is. I mean, if anybody follows Scott's schedule, follows him on social media, follows his calendar, he's the hardest working person I think I've ever seen in politics. I've never seen anybody quite like Scott. Scott's getting probably blushing at the moment, but it's true. I mean, if you follow him, he's relentless. He's constantly on the job. Nobody. In fact, one of my most popular tweets last year was I just simply said, nobody's working harder to get Donald Trump reelected than Scott Presler, and people just exploded with appreciation for Scott. So and it's well deserved, and it just goes to show what commitment can make. So anyway, thanks, Scott. Thanks for everything that you do.
My pleasure, and we're only getting started.
Good stuff. We're going to talk a little bit about, and I know you're on a tight schedule, we're going to talk a little bit about your upcoming visit here to San Francisco. But can you give folks a quick bio about how you got here to this place where you are right now?
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Scott Presler. I graduated from college from George Mason University. Couldn't find a job. Started walking dogs for a living. Then I started working at an elementary school. During that time, President Obama was re-elected in 2012. I told myself, Scott, you can sit at home and whine and complain, or you can do something about it. I created my Twitter account the very night that President Obama was re-elected. Started volunteering in Virginia in 2013. Got my first job helping to elect Governor Greg Abbott in the great state of Texas in 2014. Spent 2 years of my life working to defeat Hillary Clinton, which I'm very proud of. And I've spent the last 4 years of my life helping to register new voters, bring people into the conservative movement. And now I am laser focused on helping to flip the House from blue to red in 2022, to make sure that Republicans control the Senate in 2022, and most importantly, repealing and replacing establishment Republicans with true conservatives.
Yeah, that's a topic I really want to get into. But let me ask you this. So you were already a conservative when Obama was reelected in 2012?
I was certainly conservative leaning, but I didn't have a full understanding at that moment of the difference between an America First politician and a globalist politician. And that has shaped my political understanding to this day. I will be helping to elect America First politicians.
Yeah, I think that is the lasting legacy, and I don't think it's over. But I mean that from the first Trump administration, that's the lasting legacy, is that he drove this America First agenda, and now everything that Joe Biden does, and even subsequent presidents, whether it's whoever it is in 2024, is going to live in the shadow of that America First agenda.
Absolutely. I mean, look, one of Joe Biden's first policy rollouts is wanting to give amnesty to 11 million illegal immigrants, when in our country we have 3.6 million Black children living in poverty. We have 4 million Hispanic children living in poverty, and we have 4.2 million white children living in poverty. So that is a slap in the face to every struggling American citizen, black, white, brown, green, whatever you are. The fact of the matter is that the Democratic Party and Joe Biden are going to choose illegal immigrants over putting you first.
Yeah, I have to tell you, you're really good on that issue. In fact, when you were here last year, when we were doing our cleanup, you had a confrontation which also went viral with a woman who was, challenging you about, she was challenging us because we were helping out homeless people. Okay, that's fine. But, she was challenging you about immigrants, and you made the point really clearly that we have homeless veterans sleeping on streets and streets strewn in filth, and we're letting we're housing and offering services to immigrants who are here illegally.
Yeah. And look, Joe Biden is just opening up child camps in our country. Where are you, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez? While you're in Texas, why don't you go down to these child camps and do one of your fake photo shoots like you did before when you were crying under President Trump's administration? Why are you so willing to hold up a standard under a Republican president, but you won't hold the same to a Democratic president?
So let me tell you, just going back to where your background and your history, what was your moment? Like, a lot of people have a moment where they say it just strikes them like this is wrong. I mean, Brandon Straka is very good about that, right? He talks about his moment when he realized that he was being duped by the Democrats. What was your moment?
It's been an evolution for me, but my most powerful moment was thinking about a Hillary Clinton presidency and understanding that I never wanted her to be sitting in the White House as president of the United States. So for me, it was about making sure that, it was never about Donald Trump at first, as much as that pains me to say so. It was always about defeating Hillary Clinton in the 2016 presidential election. But President Trump then earned my respect after that from fulfilling his promises in the 2020 election was always about re-electing President Trump. But my drive and my immediate passion was making sure that we were able to fill that vacant Supreme Court justice seat of the late Antonin Scalia, and making sure that Hillary Clinton was not able to replace him with a extremist Merrick Garland, for example.
Yeah. Well, Merrick Garland, who appears to be it seems like everybody in the Biden administration, including the president himself, is sort of, in decline. And Merrick Garland, these hearings have been a disaster. But going back to Hillary Clinton, I've been saying for a long time, the first gift of the Trump administration was making sure that we never had to utter the words "Madam President." That was his first and foremost gift. Let me ask you, Scott, are you thinking about a book, about writing something, about are you keeping a log of everything you're working on?
I have had publishers reach out to me about doing a book deal, and actually they reached out to me prior to the 2020 election. But I really want people to understand something about me. My heart is in this for the movement, and that I'm not stopping for a second, and I will put everything into this. And part of the reason why I haven't written a book yet is because my first and foremost priority was helping the president. I wasn't putting myself first. I wasn't going out there for monetary gain. And I find myself in the same situation now where people want me to write a book, but 2022 is far too important for me to take out months out of my time. Because if I write a book, I want it to be an authentic message written by me, it's written by somebody else. And I need to spend my time organizing and focusing on the 2022 elections first. So A book may come in the future, but right now I'm dedicated to the movie.
Yeah, good. That's good. I mean, yeah, there's the time will come and it'll feel right, and I think people will welcome it. But it's something that you should definitely have moving forward. I know we started a bit late. I want to get through a couple of other questions before we talk about your visit to San Francisco. But I also want people to realize that we are thoughtful, critical people. Um, there were. I mean, I'm sure there were people who wouldn't criticize President Trump for anything. But let me ask you this: what's your even-handed assessment of the first Trump administration? What do you think he did really well, and what would you change?
I love that President Trump made it a priority to fulfill the promises that he campaigned on. So when he said he was going to get rid of NAFTA and replace it with something else, he did.
Mm-hmm.
He gave us the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement. When he said he was going to build that wall, well, he has been building that wall. When he said he was going to lower our taxes for the working class American people, he did it, passed through Congress. And I just think it's very important that we had a president who finally did what he said he was going to do. And I think that he's raised the bar very high for every single president that follows him. It was almost like he had a checklist and he was going down a whiteboard on his accomplishments and achievements. I wish the Trump administration and the Republican Party had better prepared for the 2022 elections and making sure that we have fair and free elections and that every legal vote is counted. And I spoke to staffers in Wisconsin who told me that in 2020, that was the first year that they had started doing voter registration. So this is part of the reason why I'm doing my own operations. I'm working independently of the Republican Party. And it's going to be very interesting to see the fundraising reports coming out from the RNC and who is still supporting them. And it's going to be interesting to see all of these alternative organizations come out of the woodwork going into 2022 to see who is more advantageous of getting out the vote, who's able to do the job better.
Right. Yeah. No, I think it's an important point. I mean, what you do is unusual and I think when people think about turnout and voter registration on the Republican side of things, they think about Scott Presler first and foremost. You're out there doing the work. The RNC should hire you. It might spoil what you do if they get their meddling hands in, but what you're doing is frankly embarrassing them a little bit because you're doing the work that they should be doing with the enthusiasm that they should have.
Yeah, we've got it down to, look, we're using our own door knocking application. We have our own data. We've already recruited 600 volunteers to help replace Adam Kinzinger in Illinois' 16th district.
Yeah.
And I'm already cutting walkbooks at the precinct level for people who want to knock and talk to their own neighbors, for example. And nobody else is doing this kind of grassroots organizing this early that we are doing. Nobody else is doing this.
I have to tell you, when you do something like that, Scott, it's such an enormous gift to the Republican Party. People should vote their conscience, and I don't fault somebody for doing that. But what Kinzinger did was wrong. I mean, he first of all, I'm not a big fan of the neocons, the guys who constantly want to have us in war. Kinzinger is firmly in that camp, but holding people. And so Kinzinger was also sort of naturally against Trump because that wasn't Trump's ball game. He wasn't interested in keeping the United States in perpetual war, and so Kinzinger was never a Trump supporter. And
I need to break this down for a second, Sharon.
Sure.
Kinzinger was a Trump supporter when he thought that President Trump would appoint him as Secretary of the Air Force.
Oh, interesting.
And when Adam Kinzinger did not get the position that he wanted, he threw a fit. Now, that's not the reason why I'm helping to primary repeal and replace Adam Kinzinger. It has nothing to do with him voting his conscience. It has everything to do with him voting an unconstitutional measure. The Constitution says very clearly that impeachment is a tool to remove a sitting officer, and therefore his vote to impeach President Trump, who is no longer in office and therefore a private citizen, cannot be impeached and is therefore unconstitutional. And these people swear an oath to uphold our Constitution from threats foreign and domestic. And he has betrayed then his oath to the Constitution.
Yep.
That's first and foremost.
Yeah, and look, you don't want to read people's minds, but it was it's apparent, I think, that he had an axe to grind with Trump, and I think when he didn't get that appointment, then it was easy for him to find the disagreements in foreign policy, for example, that led to that vote.
Absolutely, and we've seen this across the country, from Mitt Romney not getting his Secretary of State position and becoming a never-Trumper, and then running in the state of Utah, which, by the way, we will be working to primary him in the state Congress as well.
Good. I have to say, I'm more in the libertarian camp of things, so I've always been a fan of Judge Napolitano, and I don't want to digress too much here, but when I first ran against Pelosi years ago, Judge Napolitano had an internet show on Fox. It was like sort of a precursor to Fox Nation, and I announced that candidacy on his show, and I've been a big fan. But I think it's the same thing with Napolitano too. He was very anti-Trump after Trump rejected him as a prospect for the Supreme Court. And I'm so disappointed in that, and it's so sort of obvious because I've checked through back channels on that, and that was the reason why he turned on Trump. So anyway, it's a problem, a continuous problem in Washington D.C. That people don't vote on their principles, and they don't honor their oath to the Constitution, and they should be primary.
It's a disservice to us, Chairman, because it's exposed that our government is nothing more than quid pro quo. They expect something in return for their service. They're not doing it as a true statesman and out of a servant's heart. They're doing it to get something back in return. And I love that the veil has been lifted, and finally this has been exposed to the average American citizen.
By the way, folks, you'll notice that Scott is unfailingly polite. He's an Eagle Scout. Is that right, Scott?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yes. He's Eagle Scout, and he constantly refers to me as chairman, even though he's known me for some time now. I'm always honored that he does that. I think I'm going to have to, for the rest of my life and for as long as I know Scott, I'm going to have some sort of a title just to make him feel comfortable that he can call me something. So thank you, Scott. Very, very, very kind of you. You're a real example for young people on how to behave and how to address folks.
Thank you. Well, if and when I choose to run for office someday, maybe I will have a title at some point in my lifetime.
Yeah, I'd love to return the favor if that were the case. So let me ask you this before we get into what. So can you talk about? I know when we were, doing our cleanup last year, you had a confrontation with that young woman, and then of course we had one of our local supervisors call a bunch of leftist sort of Antifa characters to protest us for cleaning up, and there was that confrontation. Of course, I had a confrontation that went viral. Do you know that little video that we put out, Scott's been viewed just on my Twitter account alone, been viewed over 3 million times?
Thank you, Antifa.
Yeah. What was like the worst thing? I was looking at your Baltimore. There was some guys from Real News Network who came down and kind of gave you a hard time about cleaning up. I didn't get to finish watching that video, but what's the worst confrontation you've had at one of these cleanups?
I I would say San Francisco. I mean, that's the only cleanup where I was protested for doing an act of love. I mean, we're cleaning up, and I'm not exaggerating, literal human fecal matter. We're cleaning up needles, use syringes, and we're cleaning up your city on the West Coast when I live on the East Coast. And I just don't understand how anybody could have a problem with that. And, you know, for people to care about the environment, right?
Yeah.
I think it's a danger and a health hazard to have human excrement and syringes and trash going into our sewers and into our water supplies. So you should actually be very thankful that we're being environmental stewards to help clean up the environment.
Yeah, I mean, and part of that was driven by, well, listen, the supervisor who called those folks out on us, it was largely his district who we were cleaning up. He didn't want the bad publicity. He didn't want to be embarrassed for the awful job that he was doing. And, you know, I just got into if you follow me on Twitter, I just got into a little Twitter tiff with another supervisor, and they've become, you know, we're outnumbered quite a bit here by the Democrats, some multiple, you know, Democrats to Republicans. And they've gotten to the point where they find it really, they're really comfortable otherizing us, which is a precursor for something really kind of scary. And I push back on it all the time because I'm not going to put up with that. I'm like you. By the way, Scott is fearless. I mean, just for the time that we spend together, he does not take it from anybody, man. He stands right up to these people to their face. And I take sort of the same attitude. Maybe, you know, past chairmen of the local party have felt that they didn't want to take that fight on. I'm more than comfortable taking on that fight, as you know. Where are we going with all this? Like, we see on the local level, it's okay to otherize Republicans. You hear AOC calling for truth and reconciliation commissions, you know, echoed by former Labor Secretary Robert Reich. You know, you hear about, you know, programs being suggested for domestic terrorism. I have a really bad feeling about where we're going. Do you share that?
Absolutely. I mean, they're putting a target on our backs. They're basically inciting violence towards us and towards our families simply because we believe in freedom, simply because we believe that Democrats shouldn't be shutting down our businesses and our schools, simply because we believe in the constitutional right to keep and bear arms. We're labeled by them as domestic terrorists and therefore inciting violence against us. I think it's dangerous to democracy.
Yeah. You had a great interview, by the way, on the War Room, the second one. I saw the longer one with Steve Bannon. What was the, you were discussing, you're also now going, working on states that are controlled by Republicans in the legislation and in the executive and the governor's mansion to change voter laws. This is so important. Please tell people what that's about.
Well, the Democrats, after their loss in 2016, they didn't do it illegally. They changed the rule in California allowing for ballot harvesting. That was legal. They did that at the state level, and so it was state sanctioned. And then they flipped all of Orange County from red to blue in the 2018 midterm elections, helping to flip the House by a measure that, again, was done legally. And so I'm arguing the same thing. If you want election integrity, and if you want to change the laws and change the rules, we control 23 state governments that are trifectas. That means that Republicans control the governor, the state house, and the state senate. So in theory, we can pass anything that we want to pass. So what I'm doing is I'm educating people on how to lobby first their state subcommittees, because the subcommittee, they are the ones that ultimately decide if legislation is even voted on by the state house or state senate. So if you want to have power and if you want to exert that power, then you need to first call your subcommittees to pass legislation through so it can be voted on. And then once they have concurrent legislation in the state house and the state senate, we then have to lobby the governor to sign that legislation so it becomes law. And before you say, we don't have a problem in some of those states, well, in addition to or in including those 23 state trifecta governments are Florida, Arizona, Georgia, Ohio, which are all, in my opinion, considered swing states that are important to the presidential elections. And Doug Ducey, for example, and it is term limited, we not only in 2022 are going to have a gubernatorial election, but we're going to have a senatorial election because Mark Kelly is only filling out, was voted in 2020 to the remainder of a term. Mm-hmm. Now he's voting for a full 6-year term. And in Georgia, if you want to repeal and replace Governor Kemp, then that means that you need to get involved now to make sure that you're involved in the primary process so we have a true conservative candidate for the governorship of Georgia in 2022.
Good. Yeah, this is these are critical things, and I don't know. One of the points that I've been making is, isn't it astonishing, another gift of Donald Trump, that he's pointed out how incredibly non-transparent, how opaque our electoral system is in electoral challenges. I mean, people still don't realize that most of the cases, almost the vast majority of cases that where we're challenging the outcome of these elections were never even heard. They were just dismissed without standing. And and you have very expensive lawyers going in and filing suits where they don't know whether or not they have standing. And it seems to me that we should clean up the laws, these electoral laws, at the state level, so that you can track electoral challenges on an app. It should be. What kind of confidence does it give the voter if they don't understand, how challenges are administered? The courts are the wrong venue, at least as they're currently set up. And so this is really critical stuff, and it's at the state level where this happens. And leave it to you to figure out where you're putting your finger on the problem. And that's really great work. I'm so glad you're doing that. Thanks for keeping that or moving forward on that challenge.
My pleasure. While I'm traveling all over the country, I'm going to Texas, a state trifecta government. I'm going to Phoenix, Arizona. I will be going to states like Wisconsin, where even though we don't control the governorship, we control the state legislature. We have a Republican majority in both the state Senate and state House. There's no reason why we can't be working to pass legislation, even in states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, where it's Republican controlled except for the governor.
Well, especially in those situations where if you get the legislature to support it so strongly that they can overcome a veto, right?
Absolutely. People don't understand. Well, people don't know what they don't know. And so my entire story, my entire reason for existing is I want to empower people with the understanding of the power of one. I'm one person, one average, a more ordinary American citizen, but look at what I've been able to accomplish. And without PAC funding, without super donors. In fact, I haven't even had the support of the Republican Party or Ronna McDaniel or the RNC. And if I'm able to do this as one person, imagine what we could accomplish if every single person at home was doing this kind of effort. We could change America and the way that the election system.
Yeah, well, listen, make 3D print a lot of Scott Preslers, and the world would be a much better place. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you.
Hey, so let's talk a little bit. So you're going to be here on. You're coming in next week to San Francisco to do another cleanup. Is that right?
That's right. Well, I am coming to help clean up San Francisco, and the following day, that's on the 6th. So we're going to meet in the morning of Saturday, the 6th, to do a cleanup. And that afternoon, I'll be doing a speaking event because I'm coming to California to help collect petitions to recall Governor Newsom. And I know that the deadline is upcoming, but I want to make sure that we have even more of a buffer zone So that way, when the Democrats are trying to strike people off of our list when they finally do signature verification that they wouldn't do in the 2020 election, that we have a buffer zone to make sure that we get our recall and that the voices of the voters are heard.
Yeah, we have to run through the tape another 50 yards, right? If you can use a track analogy, we got to run all the way through and give them 2.2 million. The required signatures. The signature requirement to recall a governor is 1.5 million signatures. They've already hit that number, but there'll be, some that'll get tossed out. So the goal of the recall effort is to get 1.8 million. I think you want to get 2.2 million, just to make sure there is no doubt whatsoever how people feel about recalling Gavin Newsom. So
yes, we will be actively working to collect petitions, to bring out volunteers, and to empower them with this education. So even in California, look, it's not an excuse to tell me, Scott, I don't have a Republican representative. I'm sorry, but that's not an excuse. I need you to call them anyway. Because if you are not calling, they're not mind readers, and they don't know what's important to you unless you express that interest.
Yeah.
So I'd still call your state senator and state representative and say, what are you doing to sponsor or co-sponsor election integrity legislation to make sure that we have fair and free elections, which include things like paper ballots, no electronic voting, making sure that we are clearing the voter rolls to make sure that people who have moved or unfortunately have passed away are no longer on the California voter rolls. Those are all important things to do.
Yeah. So, and by the way, people don't realize, imagine how you'd feel, how good you'd feel if we got in supposedly deep blue California, if you got a Republican governor, and the way that this recall is laid out, that's a very strong possibility. I won't call it probable, but it's pretty damn near close to probable, because we're going to feel, well, first of all, very few strong Democrats will go in because they don't want to and put their names up as potential replacements for Gavin Newsom, because they don't want to be seen as undermining the Democrat Party. So you're really going to have a very lopsided Republican field. And if Newsom gets recalled, I think the chances are pretty high that you're going to get a Republican governor. It'd be a huge win.
It's within our power.
Yep.
Chairman, I'm kind of running.
Oh my gosh, you've been so generous with your time, and we started late. Thank you so much for coming on. I look forward to seeing you next week, and really great stuff. I appreciate all the work that you do. Thanks, Scott. Scott, give us a plug. Where can people find you?
People can stay in touch with me. I'm on Telegram. Which is t.me/Scott Presler. I'm also on Parler, Gab, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Everything is all Scott Presler, and there's only one S in Presler.
Good stuff. Scott, thanks again. Really appreciate your patience and your time. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Alrighty, see you.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. You'll see you on Thursday. Cheers.